I'd like to welcome you to a special press conference. A little unusual as we are inviting people throughout the world to watch this over the internet, and we're broadcasting on the internet as well as in a studio in New York City. I have invited you to join us because I believe it's time that we took an honest look at the HIV equals AIDS hypothesis. During this press conference, we will be sharing insights based upon documentation that we believe offers a way of re-examining our entire paradigm of how we're going about helping those people diagnosed with AIDS. Indeed, the very science of AIDS will have to be re-examined. It is not our intention to challenge the noble and conscientious scientists, physicians, and healthcare workers, activists, and those people who have tried the best they can with the tools they had, the knowledge they were given, the trust they allowed to believe in the HIV equals AIDS hypothesis, unquestioning. Rather, it is to examine the very basis upon which this entire paradigm rests. The original 4 articles, as published by Dr. Robert Gallo and his #1 assistant, in fact, one of the top researchers in his lab, Dr. Popovic. It will be our contention, as we will lay out the evidence, that those articles should be withdrawn from Science magazine and an open and honest debate allowed to engage Dr. Gallo and those who originally proffered the idea that it is a single retrovirus, HIV, that was proven to be the single cause of AIDS with no other cofactors that could so devastate the immune system, that it had a lethality against the T cells in our body, and that this was all confirmed by the electron microscope at the National Cancer Institute, because the photographs appearing in Science magazine and later in other magazines were based upon this initial premise. It is our concern that the entire scientific establishment, in good faith, accepted this and did not offer legitimate challenge. Then it became very quickly a dogma, and that dogma then was accepted by the consensus. So today, when we ask, after 25 years of an official war on AIDS, why we can't prove one single cure, why we say that it is decimating the heterosexual in Africa, and yet the population of Africa since this scourge of AIDS has occurred has doubled. Why it is that we were told it is an infectious agent, and yet today it still remains in the fast-track gays, the intravenous drug users, principally heterosexuals, and they have not shown that it is spread exponentially throughout the United States or any community based upon its infectivity. We've been led to believe that this is exclusively a sexually transmitted virus, and therefore a massive campaign, probably the largest public health campaign in world history, about having safe sex, which is a responsible and reasonable thing that any prudent person would suggest, but that is the way that HIV is transmitted. We will ask questions in all these areas. We are not debating the full war on AIDS. Rather, we are debating and offering constructive insight into what we believe is the misleading science, the inaccurate science that started it all. We have flown into New York City, multi-award winning investigative journalist for more than 40 years. She has been leading charges into abuses. Janine Roberts was the first to present in detail documentation about blood diamonds in Africa. She has presented information which has appeared on the BBC and Channel 4, on PBS in the United States, also on the leading channels in Canada and Australia. She is known for her work in multiple environments, including human rights. She not only does meticulous research, but she travels to the countries of origin, spends a great deal of time there, trying to understand what has been missed. And what is unique and what she will describe is how this was there all along. It's just that no one chose to read the fine print. So we're going to turn our forum over now to Ms. Roberts, who will lay out her challenges to all of the leading scientists, physicians, public health advocates, legislators, foundation directors, specifically the Gates Foundation and the Clinton Foundation, and others who, in their own way, have done the best they can at fighting AIDS. But we're going to ask them, before any more money is spent on this, should you not at least know whether or not the original science upon which everything was based is accurate? Ms. Roberts?
Thank you, Gary. I was as astonished as anyone when I got to read the foundation papers of the AIDS research. One should understand in science that there are foundation papers that establish for all time theories. Every other scientist after that rests their work on that foundation. If the foundation's laid down poorly, then the work erected upon it is done poorly. I went back to try to discover how the HIV had spread so widely, I was told, in Africa. I went back to find out when it was first discovered, how it got into the gay population in the United States, Canada, and in the UK, because AIDS started in the UK at the same time. And I found that there have been major American government investigations, the most serious government investigations ever launched into any science, that occurred between 1990 and 1993. These were meticulous examinations under John Dingell, Democrat senior congressman, and numerous scientists nominated by the Academy of Science and by the Institute of Medicine. But I found their work had been forgotten, but I wanted to know, what had they unearthed? Because since they did so much digging, I knew they had surfaced the lab documents that had been used in Robert Gallo's laboratory in the National Cancer Institute, part of the NIH in Washington, the foremost American publicly funded health research institute. And I found that unearthed under Freedom of Information, and among these was the draft of this key scientific document, the document that every major health institute in this land now claims to establish that HIV caused AIDS. What I found was a typed manuscript of this document as it was 6 days before it went for publication in the Science Journal. And on it, it was typed up by a senior professor, senior researcher in that laboratory, Dr. Michaelis Popovic. And all over this document is the handwritten changes by the head of the laboratory, Dr. Robert Gallo. Now, I knew of this document's existence because it had been cited as proving that this doctor cheated by using the French virus from the Pasteur Institute rather than using the virus that he had found. So this document was authenticated. It had been already proved and accepted by National Institute of Sciences that the handwritten changes by Dr. Gallo